Start with Councilmember Valenzuela.
Thank you. I just want to start to every Black resident, to every Black person in this room, especially my colleagues and our staff. Black lives do matter. I apologize that you have to hear comments like that. I know that they're not just limited to this space, and I just want to acknowledge that that is unacceptable. We're talking about a serious topic today when it comes to police accountability, and I want to start, I think, with some questions for Dr. Watson, if that's okay. So thank you for the detail in your staffing report. I really like that you mentioned in there attending forums and presenting at forums. I would love to see more focus on outreach in general. I know that when the audit first came forward, one of the caveats that you all put in very clearly, which I appreciated, was the concern that people might not be reporting incidents because they might not know who to report to or might not trust the mechanisms that exist. And so I do want to emphasize in this staffing request, not just presenting at forums, but I know you're starting to do some of that relationship building and that work now that COVID, since you came on during COVID, now that you're able to safely, but just want to reemphasize that. On this response, these series of response forms that we have and the staff item outlining the response to your recommendations and whether they're already implemented or not implemented, what role did OPSA have in creating those documents?
Hey. Hello.
You stand right in the middle, if you will.
All right.
Right, there you go. You don't have to hold it. It's good.
So the role OPSA had in creating those documents is none. They created the documents, and my job is to, add if I see something that is outside of the scope. I give my recommendations. But the policies are already written, and we meet and I look them over to see if I can have any recommendations. One of the limitations of that is that, I don't have a weekend to think about the policies or to think about the recommendations. It's all just in that one meeting. But we don't draft them, they draft them, and really I just add my take and suggestions to those policies.
Okay. I think moving forward, since I know potential future audits and this implementation plan would be ongoing, it would be great. I think traditional process is more like you say, hey, we have these flags, the department says, here's our responses, and then you write out your own sort of analysis of what's happened. I know staffing has been an issue, and that's part of why we're here tonight, but I would like to see OPSA's perspective on what you're seeing happen and what your recommendations might still be in terms of moving forward with implementation. I guess these are more comments. I will ask Letitia, Dr. Watson, how many times have you and Chief Lester met in the last 12 weeks since the report was initially presented to council?
Not.
You have not?
I meet with Howard.
Okay. 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 That's all my questions for you. I'm going to make some comments now, and then I'll ask the police for some questions in a minute. Thank you, Letitia. Sorry, I have to bring you up for just that. I have to say that I am feeling not great about where we stand in terms of this audit, and I'm going to outline a little bit why. And one of the things that I find most glaring is the department's response to concerns about implicit bias training. This is something that we talked about at length at the last meeting when we said, how do we understand these outcomes that are showing more people of color interacting with law enforcement, being pulled over, having searches, having use of force, if not for potential implicit bias. And what I find in this report is essentially the police department saying, well, we're already doing that in our training. And I don't find that sufficient. And so I'll give you a chance to respond in a minute, Chief Lester, but I just have to say that to me was one of the biggest findings of this audit, was that maybe there's more needed to be done on implicit bias. I know we had a lot of dialogue about this at the last meeting, and I'm really disheartened to basically see the box checked on every single one of those to say, oh yeah, it's in post-training. Oh yeah, we're doing this. Oh, we're going to add a virtual tour of the Smithsonian of African American history, which is cool. I will not underestimate. That's a cool experience and people should have it, but that's not quite getting to what we see in terms of outcomes for the department. And so I need to see more seriousness around these outcomes are not okay. Unless we believe these outcomes are okay because we believe that people of color are just committing crimes more frequently, then we need to be taking more steps to address why they are interacting more with officers across the board, right? So that is one bucket of feelings that I have about this. I will also echo the Vice Chair of the Police Commission's comments about the External Community Advisory Group. And I want to couch this for the folks who are still here to be like, no, absolutely no blame on you all. I appreciate that you spent time doing this. I value your input in this process. But we do have a council-appointed Community Police Commission. And I find the fact that we formed an external group and went to them for such extensive feedback, but did not go to the commission for that feedback, to be glaring. And it feels intentional. And I don't know how else to describe that other than why wouldn't we go to the body who's already convened, who represents all of our districts, who we've appointed, to ask for their input when we're doing this 12-week process if we didn't not want their input? And that's a question that I want to understand, because I'm very bothered by the overall trend we have seen in our relationship with the commission. I appreciate that the assistant city manager goes, but the department needs to be there. When we tried to implement that recommendation, we were told by the city manager we didn't need to implement that recommendation because the department went to the meetings, but they haven't been going to the meetings. And now to have another group formed and to not have their recommendations presented in such detail, it feels glaring. And I don't understand why that happened, and I would like to understand why that happened, because our process should be working the way it is designed. And this feels like we were looking for certain answers, and I don't like that, because we knew that the commission had strong feelings about that, and that makes me not feel great about how seriously the department is taking these findings. If you took it that seriously, we would not be shying away from critique. If we took it seriously, we would be digging into critique to try to figure out what's wrong. If we took it seriously, we would be using data and really working through those tensions, which is something that I hope all of our officers are good at, because you carry lethal force weapons on you all the time. Working through tensions should be a skill set, a prerequisite for being in the department at all. And so I'm bothered when it feels like we're continuing to avoid the tough conversation here. And that makes me feel really sad, because we waited 12 weeks and it was supposed to be right when we came back from summer recess, and it took longer. And I thought, good, maybe it's because, work is happening, and I'm seeing this presentation here today and I feel very incomplete. So I guess, I don't know, Chief Lester or whoever from your team would like to talk about the staffing request, because I appreciate the level of detail you put in your presentation and in the staff report, but I find this list of duties concerning for a different reason, because these are things I had thought the department was already doing. And I say this specifically because in the last several budgets that I've been on this council, compliance with state law has always been named as a need for staffing or resources. It was named most recently in the budget every time we just gave another position for military equipment and armored vehicle compliance, for instance. And so when we talk about needing additional positions, and the list of things that are on here in my briefings and conversations, like with the area captains and different folks, these were things I thought we were already doing. So I guess I'd like to hear from you why these are new positions versus a reorg of maybe existing positions, because I appreciate what you're saying in terms of it's nice to have a senior level position that's not sworn, that, having a clearer line of who does what. But I guess that's the core of my concern is, well, why aren't we just reorganizing existing people who did that and staff time to create that dedicated division? Why are we asking for additional people for things like legal compliance?
I think it's pretty simple. We have been given a number of mandates, and what we've done as a stopgap is to spread those throughout the department. Training has some, our policy division has some, the office of the chief has some. Give you an example, for the military equipment use ordinance, Deputy Chief Leong took that on. That's not the responsibility responsibility of deputy chief. It's not a good fit. He should be running a division and working on everything that entails. And so what we've done over the last number of years is to spread these throughout the organization, hope that we can meet the mandates. And for the most part, we are. We are in compliance. We do report. A lot of the data is out there. But there is a better way to do it. And the OPSA recommendations were just one thing. They identified trend, policy, gaps, and we do have those. For example, the search and seizure manual is dated in 2007. I believe the search and handcuff goes back to 1995. What happens is our policy division that works very hard. I mean, I think I mentioned that we had over 1,000 Public Records Act requests. Those all have to be vetted. Then we lean on the city attorney to make sure that we are producing the right information. I do appreciate very much that the council has supported the work of our department through transparency and through the demands by giving us some additional record staff for redaction for all of the other mandates. However, that's just basically meeting the bare minimum. And I think that we can do a better job. I think we can be more forward-thinking. And when you look at agencies that do this well, that are really trying to affect change in law enforcement, having a strategic officer to help with your compliance, to help with strategy, certainly to help with risk management, I think is essential. You know, could we continue like this? Yes, we can. We will continue to hit our mandates. Is it the best way to do it? No, I don't think so. And if you go back into about 2008, where we saw like the beginning of the recession, that hit the city of Sacramento about 18 months later, 18 to 24 months by the time we see the impact. We started cutting vacancies. We started cutting positions. We cut a 4th deputy chief, and the other 3 deputy chiefs absorbed that work. Had things not have changed, you know, we could probably continue to function like that. But if you can see just the requirements of what we need to do and what we're trying to accomplish, there's certainly things that we also do here in the city that are self-imposed, but for a good reason. You know, we talk about transparency. We built our transparency page. I would challenge you to find another agency in the region that puts that much information out. It's not legislatively mandated. You know, do I want to put more information out about demographics? Do I want to have that analyzed? Absolutely. But to get us there, that's above and beyond what we're already doing, and that's why we're asking for the positions. If we get them, then we can certainly consider a reorg. If we don't get those positions, we'll continue to progress and do the best we can with what we have, for sure.
Okay. I appreciate that you mentioned the military equipment specifically, because that was one example that pinged in my head where I'm like, I know we gave at least one additional position just for military equipment oversight. I know when the PRA expanded, because I remember the clerk made a similar ask to say, oh my gosh, we're going to get so many more Public Records Act requests that we gave additional staff for the redacting. And so I guess when you already have 100 vacant positions and that budget for those positions, I guess I need to see a clearer financial justification, because my question for the city manager is really, where's this money going to come from? What's the plan? I do support OPSA having funding, because it bothers me that they're not able to look at 100% of the complaints. There could be things hiding in there that we just didn't get to that might be important for us to know for department policy. I support, the city attorney. I saw how much the team has been working on many of the cases, including this effort. But this one really troubles me, because it feels like every time any requirement around what I consider to be existing law and expectations comes up, the request is, well, we need more staff. And I've heard that enough times now that it makes me wonder, where is the accounting for the staff we have and the money we have? But moreover, where is the money going to come from, city manager? And how are we planning to budget for these positions? Because this is significant funding moving forward.
So all the funding that's before you today is general fund Measure U funding. So like all the other discussions we had over budget, things that we do in the current year, we need to solve for. We have to have a balanced budget per our charter. It creates more, the deficits in the out years that much greater. So
Okay,
that's the answer.
This is all unencumbered general fund money,
General
like
fund,
non-committed, non-budgeted.
Measure U general fund.
Measure U general fund. Here comes Assistant City Manager Mills.
Oh, sorry, Lainey.
She's coming.
She's way in the back.
Councilmember, please.
There's also, I guess that's the question, my final question here, in addition to just general comments that I've already made. But If we had 1.8 million kind of sitting around at the end of the budget, that's of interest to me. But also, like, if we don't, then I assume this is coming from other budget items. And so just curious how we're making that work if this is approved tonight.
No, we do, Laney Milstein, Assistant City Manager, we do not have these funds available. We will be utilizing our commitments for future labor costs in order to pay for this in the current year. And we will be probably making reductions in future budget years in order to pay for these types of additions.
Okay. So this is all just labor money, so nothing else is being touched at this time that the council's approved?
No.
Okay. Okay, well then I guess my closing comments are just that, I did not need to see those videos again, but I'm glad that some people showed them because I feel like it is important for us to remember why we're here. And I feel like this audit is a real opportunity to build a stronger relationship. I'm bothered by the fact that OPSA and the chief don't have a more direct relationship, and I'll just name that. Like, I think communication between the department heads needs to be open. If it's not, that concerns me. I think that, we should be taking the implicit bias concern more seriously. Just saying it's an existing training and we're adding these additional modules is not sufficient unless we are okay with the outcomes we are seeing with use of force and traffic and other incidents, which I am not. And I'm supportive of the OPSA and city attorney positions, but I'm not supportive of the police positions at this time. And really hope that we can have a more thorough discussion. It just always feels like the answer is we need more money and more positions, and that's a big department with a lot of money, and I feel like I'd need to know much more about what is currently being done before we could really have that discussion for those many positions.